the draft. If you want to hear it tonight, you're more than welcome to listen to us. You should listen to us. We're the best draft coverage on air tonight. So we got an eclectic group of individuals.
Yeah, it'll be D-Mase, Chris Sanders, Trevor Maddich will join the party.
Nice.
TD will join the show from the Titans facility. Jared will be there, so it's going to be a blast. It's going to be a great show.
You will get every angle you can possibly, you think you could possibly get. You would get it later on 102.5. So listen to the show. You're going to hear a lot. You may even hear somebody crying. I don't know.
Somebody.
You just never know.
You'll get analysis,
Yeah, pretty good guess.
Analysis,
breakdown, and freakouts.
Everything. Emotions will change at a drop of a dime.
They're going to
Just
be
know
high.
that.
They're going to be
Exactly.
low. They're going to be every which way. We are here with you along for the ride every single step of the way. So that is tonight at 6 o'clock. Come out and hang out with us at Twin Peaks in Madison. Coverage starts at 6 o'clock. Draft goes down at 7 p.m. Want to get into Willy's trip to Vancouver, his takeaways from the first two games. Of course, Predators back in action for Game 3 on Friday. But I want to start on the draft today because it does feel like, to me, we all know one. It's going to be Caleb Williams. I feel like we have a good idea, probably, that Jaden Daniels will be the second overall pick, but it really feels like outside of one, it could all be a toss-up. That everyone has an idea, but nobody is really quite sure. It feels like more than past years. A lot of these teams, the GMs, they've been under lock and key. Mm-hmm. But there does seem like one thing as far as the Titans are concerned, because there's a million different things that the Titans could do tonight. They can trade back, they can stay put, they can take a receiver, they can take a lineman, they can take a defensive player. And if any of those things happened, I think that we could all live with it. Like, I think we would all be okay with that. So that kind of, what the Titans could do is a total wild card. Mm-hmm. The options on the table seem pretty straightforward, and it was laid out, I thought, pretty perfectly by Matt Miller of ESPN.com. In his final mock draft, he has, drumroll please, shocker, the Titans taking Joe Alt. But his explanation, he says, it's no secret that the Titans have eyes for Alt. I've been told by sources that should Alt be gone, the Titans would then potentially target Neighbors, assuming that if Alt is gone, Neighbors is probably there. But if both are gone, trade out and in a hurry. But if Alt is there in this scenario and he comes at a good value and he fills the team's biggest need, after allowing just 2 sacks over the past 2 seasons, he would be a welcome addition protecting Will Levis's blindside. So Matt Miller writes, if Alt's there, probably take Alt. If Alt's not there, probably take Malik Neighbors. If neither are there, they'll probably trade out. Doesn't it seem that that's pretty simple and straightforward?
Yeah,
kind of what we thought what we expected all along.
It seems easy.
Seems easy.
Straightforward, but we all know the draft isn't that easy, and it isn't that straightforward. Even if you have the number one pick, in some years it's this back and forth, or you may want to trade out of the first pick because you don't have a need for a quarterback, and you feel you can get whatever guy you want to get a few spots later without having to pay that person number one money. So yeah, it seems easy, straightforward, but we know the draft is never easy and straightforward. I think we're gonna see it right off the bat. Some trades happening within that first 5 picks, and then I think you're gonna see trades happen. I predict at least 2 trades within the first round. So the draft never goes, sort of the way you envision. And Brian and Chad, they've all experienced drafts, so they know it can change at the drop of a hat. But for us, it's like, okay, if he's there, take him. Mm-hmm. If he's not, then if Neighbors there, take him. But it's never truly that easy. I think if Alt's not there, I think they would be more inclined to trade down.
Even if Neighbors is there?
Yeah, I think even if Neighbors is there, I think they still want to be able to get, a tackle first. Mm-hmm. And if Alt's not there, I think then they trade out because they don't want. Do you take one of these, the second tackle or the third tackle with the 7th pick if they're not ranked the top, 5 or 10 player? If you don't have them ranked the top 5 or 10 player, then you move back a couple of spots and still able to get them while picking up extra picks. that you may need later on in the draft.
It's all about what their board is. And the thing that when I flip around the channels and they're talking about the draft, there is so much talk about McCarthy and who wants McCarthy. Are they going to trade up to 5? So I think if McCarthy is sitting there at 7, that's where because every mock draft to me has somebody trading for McCarthy somewhere, right? Whether it's 5, 6, 7, or maybe even below. It seems like there's a lot of buzz that there are teams that like McCarthy as their guy, which is great for the Titans. I would think potentially, right? This could all be done by the time they pick, and maybe it's as simple as they just pick Alt, or maybe it's Alt or Neighbors. They have the chance to select if they have that choice. But I think that's really the thing to watch for is where does McCarthy go? I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know that follows this stuff, but to me, that's where the big decisions have to be made.
And the quarterbacks as a whole, because we're focusing in on the Titans pick. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy could completely shift how the top 10 falls. But I heard Charles Robinson on with Robbie and Rexford this morning. He thinks 6 quarterbacks go in the first round. So depending on where Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix go, and I think that there are enough quarterback-needy teams in the first round that are out of the reach of those top quarterbacks, the top 3, top 4 quarterbacks, like a Minnesota or a Denver or a Vegas. They'll talk themselves into taking a Penix or a Bo Nix. So even that will completely change really the second half of the draft too. We know that it's all quarterback driven. But what Matt Miller said on ESPN.com, if Alt's there, take Alt. If he's not, take Neighbors. Neither are there, trade back. Like, it really does seem very straightforward, and it really does seem very logical. It's all scenarios that we've broken down over the last few weeks and months, and it feels like that could be the case. And if you're just doing the math, if you're doing process of elimination, it feels like, okay, one of them probably will be there. And if neither of them are available, maybe there's another player. Maybe even a Marvin Harrison falls to you at 7. Diana Rossini reported that the Titans love Marvin Harrison. But it feels too easy. And I keep asking myself, does it feel too easy and too good to be true because the draft just never works out that way? Or does it feel too good to be true because the Titans have done it the hard way in recent history?
I think it's based upon the draft. I don't look at it based upon what the Titans have done in recent memory, whether they've made it hard for themselves or not. I look at, how the draft is going to fall, how it usually falls. So I'm not worried I'm not worried the Titans will not get their guy because they are going to do something to sort of, mess it up or outsmart themselves. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if they're not able to get initially, like at the 7th pick, the guy they want, I believe it's because they drafted. He's been drafted already. So now they are, going to option B. Or plan B or plan C, whatever that plan is. Maybe it's to draft a receiver. Maybe it's to, move back in the first round and pick up some picks and then end up drafting the guy that you had below the guy that you were going to draft.
I think the math is pretty simple. When they're sitting there at 7, if 4 quarterbacks go, Alt is going to be there at 7.
Or someone.
Especially if the 4th quarterback goes, then one of the top 3 receivers will be there with Alt. So to me, that's a simple. That's why it's simple. So then the question is, what do you do? How much do you love Alt? It may not get a lot of buzz or anything, but maybe it is that simple. But as we've been talking about, this team needs extra picks. I think you have to try to find, is there a pathway to get the guy you want and get an extra pick in the process? I think that has to be, because otherwise it is just as simple as taking who you like the best at 7. And because they don't need a quarterback, they're going to get somebody they like there.
No, I would say yeah. But even I'm looking at.
Are we? Alt is going to be there at 7. We would be absolutely stunned if he doesn't go at 7.
You would assume he would be there.
I don't know.
At 7, but I'm looking at. I'm looking at Phil Yates' last mock draft.
It feels pretty good that he'll be there at 7.
And he has J.C. Latham as the first tackle going to the Chargers at 5, which means the Chargers are not moving out of that spot that they have right now. So if they draft J.C. Latham, then you're right. Alt and Neighbors, judging by, Phil Yates' latest mock draft, Neighbors and Alt will be there. But then the Giants draft. Now, will the Giants draft the quarterback or will they draft the receiver?
The Giants
Yates
are definitely a wild card here, right?
A receiver, yes.
Right, so here's another way I'm thinking it. Do we assume that Harrison is going to be the first receiver taken? Somebody's taken Harrison before 7.
So. Yeah.
So then it's either Odunze, Neighbors, one or the other, if McCarthy is in the mix, and that would be 4 quarterbacks. So it's one of the 3 receivers, and Alt would be there at 7. And then the game is, does anybody want to jump up to 7? The other one is if McCarthy doesn't go, and McCarthy's still sitting there at 7, what could you do with that? If there's a team like the Vikings or somebody like that that says, McCarthy's still there, we could jump there. We could get McCarthy here. That is a big one. A big one.
I think that would be huge to be able to use the quarterback market really to your benefit.
Yeah.
But another thing to keep in mind, because if J.J. McCarthy's there at 7, your phone is ringing off the hook.
Yes.
It's going to be
you
Minnesota.
Gotta be ready. You got to be ready.
It's going to be Denver. It's going to be the Raiders. There's going to be several teams that are picking up the phone for an opportunity to get J.J. McCarthy. And to go up from 11, 12, or 13 to 7 is much more palatable than going up all the way to 3 potentially and trading with the Patriots. But another thing to keep in mind there is it's not just, okay, trade. Atlanta would still pick at 8. Chicago would still pick at 9. The Jets would still pick at 10, assuming that those teams stay in place. So you would have to be willing to kind of roll the dice a little bit about trading back. Are there enough players that you think would be available at 11 if, Chicago and the Jets and those teams take the best players available? Do you still feel good about picking at 11? Are enough good, solid players, and specifically, ideally, positions of need be available to you at 11?
I mean,
or 12 or 13 or whatever it might be.
If you're listening to what Rand and Brian, talked about the other day in their press conference, that this is a deep draft when you're talking, tackles or offensive linemen and receivers. So if you do move down to 7, I think you're still able to address a need with possibly the best player available. It may not be, it may not be the guy that you initially wanted, whether it be Alt or Neighbors, or Harrison, but it's a guy that you had ranked high on your board that it's not a reach by selecting him at 11 or 13, something like that. So just don't move too far down where you can't get the guy that you want, or guys you wanted, like guys that were on your board, top guys at each position. If you move down to 11, can you still get that receiver or that tackle that you want that's going to be a plug and play guy? Even at 11, can you do that? And
Rand and Brian Callahan said, look, there are guys in this draft that we're not going to move away from.
Exactly.
So even if J.J. McCarthy is available at 7 and Minnesota is picking up the phone and saying, look, we'll trade you 11 and 23 for the 7th overall pick, but Joe Alt is there for the taking, that might be one of those guys that they're saying, look, thanks, but no thanks. 11 and 23 sounds really intriguing, but this prospect, whether it's Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors, whoever would be there available for them at 7, they'll say, no, that's more important to me than 11 and 23. But D-Mase, you brought up Field Yates' most recent mock drafts. Has J.C. Latham mocked to the Chargers? That's something that's new.
Yeah.
That's kind of come out of nowhere. That's what I want to continue getting into that conversation coming up next, because now all of a sudden there's a whole lot of smoke about J.C. Latham at 5. We've talked a lot about how the Chargers are a major turning point in this draft. The decision that the Chargers make at 5 very well could directly affect what the Titans want to do at 7. So where is this coming from? We'll get into that coming up next. We'll also get into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. All of your draft thoughts, your draft questions, and draft predictions. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Happy draft day to all of you. I know you're all prepared and ready for the draft and you're excited, as am I and the team. We're all excited for the today's draft, but I want you to be excited too about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD, because I've been talking about Dr. Lodge for the last 3 or 4 months now, okay? I've shared how they help with imbalanced hormones and how they offer a comprehensive weight loss program that addresses the root cause of weight gain, people. But now I want to tell you about a new laser, which I use, they offer, called the Empowered Laser. With this laser, Dr. Lodge and Cool Springs MD can help you turn back the clock and take control of your body. And who doesn't want to take control of their body? Because this laser has many use. Okay, it's not just I'm using it for my abs. You can use it for a bunch of things in regards to your body. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you a few things that you can use it for. Okay, women, learn about this new laser and how it stimulates your Kegels in 20 minutes. The only laser indicated for mixed urinary stress incontinence. And hear about the tone feature, which I use it for, the muscle stimulator that increases your muscle production and toning in your stomach, thighs, love handles, arms, and more. Okay, people, Dr. Lodge and his team are ready to help you turn back the clock and take control of your body with the new Empowered Laser at Cool Springs MD. So you need to visit their website, make an appointment, and you do it like this by looking up their website. And here's the website. It's coolspringsmd.com.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line to me is important. I mean, if I ask you the question of like what position group depends on no other position group to be good, but every other position group depends on them to be good, what position group is that? Offensive line. They're not relying on any other position group to be good. They go out and they're good. But yet every other position group relies on the offensive line to be good. And then the D-line, they'll be the ones that argue back, we don't need the offensive line to be good. Do you? Do you like when the offense has a 12-play drive and the field position? Yeah, okay, you're right. It's like, so yeah, that building that kind of offensive line, that's exciting. Can't wait to do that.
Can't wait to build the offensive line, says Jim Harbaugh. That was about a month and a half ago, and when I heard that, instantly, an alarm went off in my head of, is he really excited about building the offensive line? Or does he want people to think that he's excited about building the offensive line? As we know, it's silly season and it is smokescreen season. D-Mase, before the break, you mentioned how Field Yates' most recent mock draft, his final mock draft, has the Chargers taking J.C. Latham, the offensive lineman out of Alabama. And I thought, well, that's weird. Every mock draft that I've seen with the Chargers taking offensive lineman has Joe Alt. I haven't seen a mock draft that has J.C. Latham as the top lineman off the board. I looked at Daniel Jeremiah's most recent mock draft. He also has J.C. Latham going to the Chargers. That's strange. Now, all of a sudden, two of these NFL draft insiders have the Chargers taking J.C. Latham. I talked to some people that have connections in the league, and I have heard that Joe Ortiz, the general manager with the Chargers, he came up with Daniel Jeremiah as a scout in the league and that they have a close relationship. You might be able to piece those pieces together. Maybe Daniel Jeremiah is hearing from Joe Ortiz, the general manager of the Chargers, that J.C. Latham is their guy. Therefore, Daniel Jeremiah put that in his mock draft. Maybe that's now the buzz for some of the draft insiders is the Chargers want to go J.C. Latham. And that kind of makes sense, right? Rashawn Slater is their left tackle. They still need a right tackle. So that now begs the question, is that really what the Chargers want to do? Or is that just a smokescreen?
It could be. I think Jim is right. Listen, you got to build your offensive line up. And for a head coach like Jim Harbaugh, that's paramount to his team. Because what? He likes to run the football. He likes to play. He has this, he's in the modern day era of football, but he likes to run the football and play tough defense and kind of go from there. So, when he talks about the offensive line, I think he means it. But, we've talked about them when this first came up. And we said, well, why is he even talking off, why is he even, insinuating the left tackle position? Because they already got a left tackle. Would they put him at right tackle? I don't know. But he brings it up. But now you see the question was not necessarily left tackle, it's probably right tackle. Building up the offense.
They just took a left tackle.
Yeah, they just took now they can take a right tackle in J.C. Latham. And stay true to what Jim Harbaugh is saying. Build up the offensive line. When he says build up, people automatically say Joe Alt. They look at Joe Alt because he's considered the best offensive lineman in this year's draft. But that may not be what he's thinking, Jim Harbaugh. He may be thinking, offensive line, but I'm thinking the right tackle. So in his own quirky way, he is trying to throw off the draft, but he knows exactly who he wants, and it may not even be Alt, but we all assume it's Alt because he brought up the offensive line.
Well, we know Harbaugh beats to his own drum.
Exactly.
So he is a little bit.
This is a man that's living in an RV.
Yeah, he's crazy. But if I were an NFL coach or somebody who knows the game of working the media, keeping people off base, it would be my goal to do an interview like that over the. You said that was what, a month and a half ago. Mm-hmm. So for 2 months, I would say, okay, you're going to do 10 interviews, 15 interviews. I would do a speech on every position group.
Yeah,
I'm sure if we dug far enough, you could probably have him talking about another position besides.
O-line.
So I don't think he's been doing this every week and saying, yes, we got to talk about the offensive line. You know what I mean? He's probably done different interviews where he's been asked different questions and he probably throws you off. So I just don't, I'm not reading too much into that one quote to have me thinking this. I do think, though, that they want to work that pick. They want to trade. There's a lot of smoke from a lot of different places that's the team that's going to be wheeling and dealing at number 5, right? That's a coveted pick, and they're not set. They have the quarterback. Like you said, they already do have a left tackle. They need players. They need picks. It's a new thing. I would be trying to work it if I were them.
And I think that's exactly what they're doing. And that could be their strategy in all of this J.C. Latham hype. That maybe the Chargers want it out there that, yeah, we like J.C. Latham. We want to take J.C. Latham. And Minnesota, let's say at 11, could look at that and say, look, you can get J.C. Latham at 11. Like, he's probably still going to be there at 11. You want J.C. Latham, but you might not feel like you can take him at 5. We'll trade you the 23rd overall pick and we'll swap with you. Like, maybe this is the Chargers' way of saying, like, waving their red flag and saying, we're open for business. Because does anybody view J.C. Latham as the 5th best player in this year's draft? Are Chargers fans going to be able to live with the Chargers taking J.C. Latham with the 5th overall pick if Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors is on the board? Like, if I'm a Chargers fan, I would go ballistic if you took J.C. Latham with the 5th overall pick if there was a receiver that was available. So maybe this is the Chargers' way of saying, hey, look, we're open for business for the 5th overall pick. Perhaps. Maybe this is the Chargers' way of telling the Chargers fan base, like, look, this is our guy. Like, we love J.C. Latham. I don't know, but I think that there are too many connections there. And there is now too much conversation about J.C. Latham to the Chargers to be ignored. I mean, even Charles Robinson was on with Robbie and Rexford this morning and talked about J.C. Latham to the Chargers.
I will say this about the Chargers, though. He has brought up offensive line. It has affected other teams to the point where in like the last 5 days, J.C. Latham, the Alabama right tackle, became a very prominent. There's a very prominent belief that like the Chargers are very locked onto Latham. Some people believe the Titans really like Latham. Like if let's say Alt came off at 5, some people think the Titans would be more than happy to run the card in on Latham at 7. I trotted it out yesterday. I think it was early in the early afternoon. I said I put Latham at 5. I get killed by Chargers fans. They absolutely murdered me. And then Daniel Jeremiah comes out with his mock late last night. And oh, surprise, Latham now is at 5. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm not the only one hearing this. Clearly,
he's copying you.
I'm sure DJ's copying me. But yeah, I sit there and I look at it and I'm like, they clear like if they do this, and that's when I spotted them there. I'm like, if they do this, like, where are they getting their wide? They need wide receiver talent, and you'd be passing an elite at 5 to do this. Maybe even Marvin Harrison Jr., depending on how it all comes in.
So is it really the Chargers love J.C. Latham, like Charles Robinson has said, like Daniel Jeremiah has mocked, and let's not forget his connections to Joe Ortiz, the general manager of the Chargers, like Field Yates has mocked? Or is this the Chargers' way of saying, hey, look, we like this guy, but the 5th overall pick could potentially be open for business? Or is it all a smokescreen? They're just going to take the best available wide receiver at 5 anyway.
This is, again, how I would set I would be surprised. And if I'm the Titans, pleasantly surprised if nobody trades in the top 6 picks, and 5 being most likely. And obviously the Giants, you're hearing a lot of similar stuff with them. So to me, if there's no trades from 1 through 6, man, that puts you in a great position. I think puts you in a great position to get a lot more. Because somebody,
why do you think?
Because don't we think somebody wants to go get McCarthy? Somebody?
The way it seems, the way they are,
or to get somebody. If it doesn't have to be McCarthy.
The way
it's somebody that's willing to give you more.
The information's been coming out. It seems like McCarthy is primed to go at that 5th spot. But listen, I am not. I hear it, I see it. I'm not buying it. It's the same thing we saw last year with Will Levis, where right up at draft day, he could be the number 1 pick. He can be a top 5 pick. Even as the draft is ding, 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 the first pick, they're still talking about Will Levis, and he ends up getting drafted in the 2nd round. So, as much as the noise has been out there about J.J. McCarthy moving up, and because that will affect the draft moving forward, as if they're able, whoever wants to get him, say it's Minnesota, they're able to move up to that 5th pick, all that they have to give up to get him, it's going to drastically change the draft after that pick. To me, I don't believe it. I still think.
If you don't buy the J.J. McCarthy hype, do you buy J.C. Latham to the Chargers?
I can buy more J.C. Latham to the Chargers than I'm buying J.J. McCarthy as a top 5 pick. I'm not saying J.J. McCarthy wouldn't be a 1st-round pick. If he's in the 1st round, okay, I'm cool with that. I'm cool if he drafted 5th. It doesn't matter to me. But I think what will happen is he won't. It's more likely that J.C. Latham gets drafted than J.J. McCarthy get drafted at that 5th position. Because if the Chargers stay there, if they feel they can't get what they want for that 5th pick, if Phil Yates is right and Daniel Jeremiah is right, they take J.C. Latham at the 5th pick. Now, the Titans probably didn't have him as their 5th best player on the board, but the Chargers may have him as that because they don't need a left tackle. They need a tackle, which they could throw on the right side. Now they got 2 bookend tackles. So they may see him as the 5th overall pick, whereas maybe we don't or the Titans don't.
Are you buying it, Willie?
I do not think that Latham will be the pick at 5. I think they should be able to maneuver, if they really want Latham, to get down into a spot where they feel like they could still get Latham. I think it's a mistake to ever tie yourself to one guy when you're picking there.
I would agree.
Unless you have the 1st pick.
But why
then
would
you can tie yourself to one guy.
But why would I move? Okay.
It just to me, like, why you would really be limiting your options if you're saying we have to have this one guy.
You're right from that standpoint, but
especially him, who's nobody has rated that high.
He's a top 15 player, J.C. Latham.
But there's a difference between
there's
15
a difference
and
in 5. Yeah. But again, I go back to, if I'm the Chargers, what are my needs? And whatever that need is are they the best player on the board for that particular need? Do I still have them as a top 10 player? If I still have them as a top 10 player on my board, then I'm drafting them. I don't care what anybody else is doing on their board. On my board, J.C. Latham is a top 8 pick. We're at 5. We can't get a trading partner, so we're going to draft him at the 5th pick. If I'm Minnesota, say, because Minnesota sits at 11th, right?
Yes.
If I'm Minnesota, why would I, unless there was considerable chatter about another team moving up, why would I move up from 11 to 5? They don't need a quarterback. The Chargers don't need a quarterback, so they're not going to draft McCarthy.
To get ahead of any other team that might want to.
That's what I'm saying. I need to,
namely the Giants.
Exactly,
right?
man. I need to be listening to
Denver if they want to trade up. Because you can control what you can control. You might say, well, the Chargers don't need a quarterback, but who's to say that that LA's not on the phone with Denver?
Well, so McCarthy has gone out. He did a big interview where he was saying, I love the Giants. I had 2 great meetings with the Giants. That is awesome for the Chargers because all those teams that really might want McCarthy might be thinking, well, we got to get to 5 because otherwise the Giants could take McCarthy at 6. Now you try to get information, right? But to me, that's the game. That's the game play. That's why the Chargers are a great spot to me.
Well,
I think I would trade that pick.
I think the Chargers could control their own destiny.
If I'm the Chargers, I'm not, unless there's considerable chatter about another team, and I just feel another team's gonna jump over us to get it. Then I probably can wait to the 7th pick and trade with the Titans to still get that quarterback. Y'all see what I'm saying? Because there's not.
If you're patiently,
if
you're
patient
okay with
and
it going either
because
way.
you know the Chargers are not taking a quarterback, so you're sitting there and you figure there's potentially 2 other teams, and I'm only counting Denver because what. Yeah, I'm going to count the Raiders because the Raiders sit a little bit higher than Denver, don't they, in the draft? What do Denver?
Denver's at 12. The Raiders are at 13.
Okay, so I'm counting Denver at 12. I'm looking at Denver because I'm not sure the Raiders have enough to give up to move up to that 5th spot. Now, Denver may have it. I don't know. But if I'm Denver, I'm sitting back and I'm just watching because if I don't trade at the 5th, I can trade at the 7th. Or I can't trade at the 6th.
Assuming your quarterback
is
there.
Yes, assuming the quarterback is there. But
Can
I'm
you
thinking,
assume that if you're Denver?
if you're looking at the board and what the teams want, you would assume if you're not being swayed back and forth by Harbaugh's, antics, if you're patient, he may just fall to you at the spot where your pick is at his 11.
You know what assuming
12.
is.
I know that, but that's all that's all the draft is about. It's like you're assuming this person's going to take this team's going to take this guy. The team behind me is going to take this guy. They want to maneuver to move up. What do I do as a team based upon my needs? Do I move up or do I stay put or do I move back? So you're always assuming or trying to figure out what teams are doing.
In regards to the J.C. Latham smoke, I'm with Willy. Look, I buy that the Chargers like J.C. Latham. They need a right tackle. J.C. Latham is probably the best in this draft, one of the top offensive linemen. I don't buy J.C. Latham at 5. I think that's an irresponsible pick with the 5th overall pick.
How can you say that's irresponsible when they have him? I'm just saying, if they have him on their board as a top 5 or 6 player and they draft him at that spot, that's good for the Titans.
It's music to my ears.
Yeah, take them.
It's good for the Titans, but I'm saying I think the Chargers are smarter than that.
But they might have him higher on their. Like some teams have certain players higher on their board than other teams. That doesn't mean that if they do indeed pick them, that it's a wrong pick because Willie has him at 7, you have him at 8, but I have him at 4.
I
can
say that it's an irresponsible pick because I think that it would be. Because I think at 5, you're going to have one of those receivers there. The Chargers need a receiver. So I think that this is either the Chargers' way of blowing a whole bunch of smoke or it's their way of saying, we like J.C. Latham, but we can't necessarily take him at 5. So everybody pick up the phone and let's see what your best offer is. D-Mase, you say, Chargers don't need a quarterback. We sure?
Chargers.
We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on the Louisville Bats on the road. Pregame at 5. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
Okay, here's my wild prediction. We know how crazy Jim Harbaugh is, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got a quarterback there in Justin Herbert. He's watched him in some of the mini camp works. He's watched him work out. Well, who else has he watched practice that's involved tonight? He's involved a guy named J.J. McCarthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if he says, you know what? This kid I just coached is as good as this guy right here that we're paying $250 million or whatever that number is, right? Let's trade him. Let's get a slew of great picks. We'll get all kinds of cap room, and let's get my guy JJ. Trust me, he's as good as this guy. We'll be back in cap heaven, but we can't say anything about that because if we do, people will come up and try to steal JJ from us. So I just have this hankering in the back of my head that wild, crazy guy Jim Harbaugh is going to pull a coup tonight.
That was Rick Neuheisel on SiriusXM SEC Radio this morning. I asked Rick, I was like, give me your spicy take of what's going to happen tonight. D-Mase, your former offensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens, he says the Chargers are going to take J.J. McCarthy and trade Justin Herbert. What do we think of it?
Bull. I call bull on that one. Big time.
What did he put in his
bull?
coffee?
Yes. Rick's my guy. Rick's my
Rick is the
guy.
best.
I love Rick. But man, oh man. Is Rick on the payroll too? Is Rick on Jim's payroll too?
He did used to play for the Chargers.
Yeah, he did.
I saw him play. Remember
He's an
at
LA guy.
At
He's
SEC
an LA
Media
guy,
Day,
yeah.
I said, I saw you play for the Chargers at the big sombrero in Tampa. I saw him.
So I can't. And, I don't know if Rick was like really serious about it or he was just throwing different scenarios. I think he was more of the things that more than likely won't happen, but if it does, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, I would be surprised.
I'm saying him. That's what Rick is saying. I would be damn surprised if you go ahead and stay at the 5th pick and trade away your Justin Herbert. You're going to be in the same pool as Josh McDaniels after a while. Make an idiot move and not getting the job anymore. I know Josh McDaniels has one, but he's hanging on by a thread. No, as a matter of fact, he doesn't even have a job anymore. He got fired. He's not getting a job because of some of the idiotic things he's done as head coach in this league.
He's kind of a dum-dum.
And if you make that move, and you know what? Crazy part about it, he's probably the only guy that can make that move. Bill Belichick can't make it. His brother can't make it. Bill Parcells can't make it. Hell, if Vince Lombardi came back, he couldn't make it. But Jim Harbaugh could make that move. And for some reason, people would think it was genius. I don't know why, but people would convince themselves that move, trading Justin Herbert for J.J. McCarthy, is a brilliant move. I guarantee you there'll be people coming on the airwaves. That was a brilliant move by Jim Harbaugh. Oh, look at him. Super Bowl bound. All right, you're going to get your ass fired. Go ahead and make that move. See what happens.
You know what would be funny is, can you imagine, an NFL GM who's done all this research? You are not doing research thinking Justin Herbert's going to become on the trade block here on draft night. You'd have to be saying, whoa, you're saying you want to trade Justin Herbert to us?
I'm like,
I got to move some stuff around. I got to make some phone calls.
Exactly. I'm like, everybody's like, okay, what can we give up to get Justin Herbert? What can we give up?
If I'm Minnesota, I'm picking up the phone and I say, I'm giving you 11, 23, and our first rounder next year for Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
And think about it. If the Chargers got that, let's say they take J.J. McCarthy because Jim Harbaugh's been the one talking up J.J. McCarthy all offseason to put your money where your mouth is, Jim. Take him. Draft him at 5. Take a receiver or a lineman at 11. Take another receiver, the other lineman at 23.
It can be done.
He could talk people into doing it because Jim has just enough of a screw loose to convince himself that it's a good idea.
It's the Mad Hatter. That's what he is. He convinces you that the move he's going to make is the greatest move ever. And you start to buy into it.
Maybe it is.
Maybe it could be. But you know what? I wouldn't do that move. And like I said, he probably is the only head coach that can make a move like that. But I'm like, trading back, you get 11. You get basically 3 first-round draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at it, just the surface of it, I wouldn't do it because you got your quarterback. That's one thing. It's like, if I got me one, I want to keep
That's
mine.
the one thing they don't need.
Exactly. But just think about it. 3 first-round draft picks.
Including 2 in this year's draft.
Exactly.
And you don't even have to come off of 5.
Yes. Wow. Ooh.
See, D-Mase, you're talking yourself into it.
See? Look what you made me do.
You fell for the trap.
Look at what you made me do. I fell for it. Just like anybody else would. I just fell for
He's
it.
tricking you. It's a Jedi mind trick.
But I would say, let's say if it happens in a crazy fantasy world, Minnesota trades 11-23 and a first next year for Justin Herbert. Does Minnesota instantly become a Super Bowl contender?
Of
Justin
course.
Herbert with O'Connell, with Justin Jefferson. Like, if I'm Justin Jefferson, I'm re-signing in Minnesota if Justin Herbert's my quarterback.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm definitely signing back in Minnesota. Like, damn it, where's the contract? Let me sign it.
Exactly.
Bring it on.
I got me a
can't
quarterback.
run there fast
exactly.
enough.
So, but see, look, he's even making me think that there's a possibility that can actually happen, and I'm like, damn, Jim, go ahead and do it.
Go ahead, Jim.
Please do it. But that's the draft. Things like that. There's always going to be, a certain, group within the NFL world during draft that's going to stir up things, whether it be, Jim moving out of 5 or staying at 5, or now J.J. McCarthy to the Chargers, or J.J. McCarthy moving up the board, or J.C. Latham might get drafted at 5th. This is what the draft is about, and this is why you love it, because as much time as we've spent talking about the individuals that can go in the first 5 or 10 picks, and we are like 90-something% sure they will be taken, the day of the draft, all of it gets thrown out the window the minute the clock starts, because we don't know who and when and where they're going to get drafted, other than possibly Caleb Williams, the number 1 pick.
Never say never as far as the NFL draft is concerned. And speaking of that, Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, will join us coming up next. We'll get his latest on what he's been hearing, maybe some more smoke screens coming out before the NFL draft now that we are just a few hours away. Tim Hasselbeck will join us coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Well, yesterday I did this commercial from the bus heading to the Vancouver airport, and some of my colleagues on the bus said, hey, I need to call Lee Company. Lee Company is, of course, a big sponsor of our Nashville Predators coverage, but they heard me give the commercial and they're like, this sounds great. I need to call 615-567-1000 or go to leecompany.com. I said, absolutely you do. Absolutely. They do some excellent stuff for our house, and so hopefully I had some attention, some unique attention when you're on the same bus and you have no choice but to hear me babble about stuff. But that was yesterday. Message is same today. If you haven't had the air conditioning unit checked at your house in a while, it is always a good measure to do that at this time of the year. You're going to be very happy with yourself in the middle of the summer when you know that thing is humming along efficiently when the weather gets hot every day. It's just very simple. But don't stop there. Get the year-round coverage of the home maintenance plan at Lee Company. It's the best way to go. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. Small monthly fee, free checkups all year round on not only your air conditioning, but your heating, your plumbing, and electric, and you get discounts on repairs when needed. Great plan. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and The Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live. And we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Only 7 hours away from the NFL draft going down in Detroit. And joining us now to break it all down is Tim Hasselbeck, our friend over at ESPN, and of course, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers. Tim, appreciate you for joining us today. We were just talking about how I find it very interesting that now all of a sudden we've seen 2 different mock drafts. Mock J.C. Latham to the Chargers. We also heard Charles Robinson, Yahoo Sports, earlier on our station say, I've been hearing a lot of smoke about J.C. Latham to the Chargers. Can the Chargers justify taking J.C. Latham, the right tackle out of Alabama, with the 5th overall pick?
I mean, I think you can. Like, I said to you guys last week, like, if you think somebody is going to be a decade-long starter, if you think somebody is going to, be somebody that's kind of plug and play, then I think wherever you take him in the first round is justifiable. Because look at how many times we say, okay, well, this guy's got to go at that point, and or he's good enough to go at that point, and then you get him, and he's a top 3 pick, and you look up 5 years later, and you're not sure you won't even pick up the 5th-year option or if he's any good. So I really think that, like, as we look at the first round, and we try to separate the first round for the first 5 picks, and then, he's the back half of the first round. Like, to me, if you are a decade-long starter and you fit what that team needs, like, yeah, take him at the top.
With that being said, there's been a whole lot of speculation and smoke, so much talk about J.J. McCarthy. If you had to guess right now, where is J.J. McCarthy playing next season?
I'd say the Denver Broncos.
Ooh. And how does Denver get him?
My guess is that they would have to move up, would be my guess. This is a weird year, and I think you guys would probably agree. You've been, talking about it, for months now, but the quarterback's really flying off the top like this, and is J.J. McCarthy really going inside is he really going inside the top 10 for sure? Is he really going inside the top 6 or 8 for sure? And, I think we just, to me, just look at the 2 quarterbacks the Titans have drafted the last couple of years. The night before draft night, the last 2 years, people thought that Malik Willis and Will Levis would potentially go in the first round, and they didn't go anywhere near the first round. So, I just think the quarterback rumors, the quarterback, news and drama, I just feel like in recent drafts has just gone crazy.
We'll talk with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst and head coach of the Ensworth Tigers here in town. Now, Tim, because I'm looking at these quarterbacks, let's stay on the quarterback theme. How do you think scouts and teams evaluate these quarterbacks? From this standpoint, you have a guy like J.J. McCarthy who hasn't been a 3 or 4 year starter, but then you look at a guy like Bo Nix, and everywhere he's been basically a starter. Now, I know it didn't work out the way he wanted it to in Auburn, that's why he transferred, but he still was a good quarterback with what they asked him to do at Auburn. Then you saw him being able to adjust to a new system in Oregon, and he elevates his game even more. So where is that separation between a Bo Nix and, say, a J.J. McCarthy who wasn't a 4 or 3 year starter?
Yeah, well, I think one of the really tricky things in evaluating quarterbacks, and I actually did something recently on Outside the Lines about this, is how do you evaluate these guys? And when something didn't go well, what do you attribute that to? Or when it did, what do you attribute it to? And so, I look at Bo Nix, and just being candid about what I thought of Bo Nix at Auburn, I thought, man, he really walked into a high-pressure situation. Dad was a quarterback there, was a very highly recruited player coming out of high school, was thrown into the mix to play at Auburn early, and they were a good team, but not necessarily a great team. and we're going to play certain teams in the SEC that were better than them. Well, that's hard for a young quarterback to thrive in that environment. I think, generally speaking, he had played some good football, but like all quarterbacks, you're going to make some mistakes. And so now, you get run out of town, essentially, by probably the place that you grew up, envisioning yourself playing at because of his dad's history of playing there. And now you get essentially thrown to the West Coast. Well, then he gets there and he makes the most of that situation. So in terms of that, D-Mase, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, I like the fact that he's weathered the storm. Now, I don't know how somebody else looks at it, but I look at that and I go, something? There's a little bit of grit and resiliency inside that guy. I like that. I think in some ways you can apply the same thing to J.J. McCarthy. Job wasn't ever, handed to him. Job wasn't, he had to earn it, played in some big pressure moments, and then also didn't get a ton of opportunities because of their offense. So, you look at those things and then you say, okay, well, what did they do just even schematically? How does that fit with us? And so I think you have to look at all of that, and that's why it's definitely not an exact science. And so, on somebody like Bo Nix, you'd say, the way I would look at it is, I like the grit and resiliency. Somebody else might look at it and go, nah, he walked into a perfect, situation and, walked to a perfect situation in Oregon with an amazing offensive line and a ton of speed. And honestly, just a lot of guys would have had success. But maybe somebody else looks at it that way, but that's not how I would.
Yeah, and I can understand that because you can take that same theory for J.J. McCarthy. Listen, that's a ready-made team. Only thing you have to do is not mess it up. And he didn't mess it up, but he was one of the reasons that they won games. So you can kind of, look at it from both angles where it could be a plus or a negative, just depending on how you see that player and if you feel that he's going to be available for you. Now, in his top 10, 15 picks, how many defensive players you think go? Because we've been talking a lot about offensive linemen, quarterbacks, obviously, and now you throw J.J. McCarthy in the mix, you might have 4 quarterbacks drafted in the top 5. So you're talking quarterbacks, offensive linemen, and receivers. Where do you think, or how many guys do you think go in that top 15 in regards to defensive players?
Listen, I think the quarterback's going to be a big part of it, and then I think where their first receiver goes, offensive tackle is going to be in the mix. We see a bunch of offensive. Somebody was asking me the other day about are we going to break the record for offensive players drafted in the first round? Right? I think that number might be at 19. I think. So that's a good question. I think the quarterbacks determine it. Here's what I don't think. I don't believe that, I don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to go in the top 6, which pushes him back, which, if he's the next guy and there are 4 quarterbacks taken by pick 12, I think it's the most quarterbacks that we would see, go that quickly. And then I think there's a really good chance that there's not another one that goes in the first round. And so, in that environment, this idea that there's going to be this massive offensive run in the entire first round, or what's going I think that's going to be the real indicator. That's my hunch on it. Now, look, I think Michael Penix, Jr. could be a first round draft pick with a totally clean injury history. And so maybe somebody looks at it and is like, yeah, I'm not worried about what he's been through. And maybe he jumps up, before Bo Nix. And so short answer, I'm totally guessing, but I do think there's going to be a lot of offensive players taken in the first 15 picks.
Tim Hasselbeck is with us. So Tim, go a little further on Penix and your evaluation of him. He's an interesting story. He played so long at Indiana before he was really in the spotlight, and then he goes to Washington, becomes much more of a household name. He's older, which is another theme that we've talked about these last couple of years. That's sort of a new way that you have to factor in guys who have, because of the COVID, are older when they come into the draft, but they have more games under their belt. So what are his strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, so here's an interesting thing. I originally, just to kind of give you a sense of my posture on how I viewed him, and how we can get tainted at times. I called the Gator Bowl when it was Indiana playing Tennessee. And Indiana was playing a quarterback that had come in relief because Penix had been injured, and he played really, really well. And they were a pretty good football team. Probably one of the, Indiana hadn't been to a bowl game in like 30 years and really had a chance to beat Tennessee in the game. Anyway, because the quarterback was playing well, I was kind of like, I don't know how good this Penix guy is.
Right.
Like, really? And he keeps getting chances, and he was injured. And this other guy, he just makes good decisions.
Right. You hear that about Levis a lot. Like, well, why didn't he get the starting job at Penn State if he's that good?
Correct. Yeah. And so I entered into the Michael Penix, kind of conversation as I was a doubter because I had forget the other kid's name. This other kid who's just kind of less explosive, less dynamic, but a good football player and a good quarterback, he was having all the success. And so that was my initial posture on Penix. Well, he's a really good passer. Not everybody, as much as I try, not everyone starts at the same level. So here's what I would say about him. I think that he sees it great. I think he's a great anticipator. I think he's a really talented thrower. One of the things that, I think is big with quarterbacks is like their scope of vision. As a guy, does he kind of have a narrow scope of vision, or does he see things broadly? And I think that he does that. And so I think it's one of the things that makes him a really good passer, along with, having plenty of arm strength and having, being able to play with good anticipation. So, and I think teaching someone to be a passer is hard. I think he's naturally a passer. I think the injury history will scare people. It just will, collarbone, couple ACLs, like all of that. Not a huge guy. But I think that if he had a clean injury history because of the type of passer he is, I think he would undoubtedly be a first-round pick.
On Joe Alt, I'm curious about this mental dynamic that I'm sure happens a lot over the years in drafts, where you're sitting there saying, I got my biggest need, and here's a guy that everybody says is ready to plug in there.
Yep.
And I'm wondering too, how that could maybe sway your decision when really you're looking about who's the best guy for the next 5 to 10 years, rather than this guy plugs a hole this year. I could put him right in there. It's simple. You have to go beyond that, don't you?
Yeah, I think you do. But generally speaking, the guy that you look at and you go, yep, I can play him right now, like he's usually the guy too that like, yep, you can play him in 5 years and in 10 years, right? And so like I agree with you. But like, so when you're in that environment and you can sit there and go, it can run you into trouble too, Willie, right? You can say, okay, this tight end, this offensive tackle is ready now, but man, hey, Isaiah Wilson, like he might be Orlando Pace. Like he's not him now, but maybe he could be. Like to me, maybe this is why I'm not a gambler. Like I wouldn't do it. Like why would you do it?
The safer pick sounds better to you.
Well, and here's the deal: the reason the safer pick sounds better is because you've watched him on tape and you're like, yep, he's good. Like I can trust it. I see it. And in our interviews, it checked out, and he's already strong. And yeah, the reason that he looks like he's going to be good right now is the same reason that he's going to be good in 5 years and in 10 years. Like it's just, you know what I mean? Like that's generally how it works. Now, are there some guys that develop and their ceiling is just feels so much higher because athletically they're different? Sure, but listen, your baseball background, I'm sure it's applicable where you're like, look, that guy's just a good pitcher. He's got great command. He's got an amazing approach. He's smart. He's competitive. And you're like, yeah, but the other guy throws, 7 miles per hour faster. Be like, yeah, that guy hits 4 guys a game. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I can't get anybody out, but he throws a lot harder. But the scouts are like, in 5 years, watch out for this guy.
Yeah. Hey, guess what? You know what those guys do? They get you fired.
We're talking with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, kind of sticking along the offensive line theme. It's so easy for us to get up here and say, oh, there's a right tackle. Just move him over to the left side. Or he's a guard. Just move him out to the outside. Play tackle. It's easy for us to say. But, of course, it's so much more difficult to actually execute. And I know every prospect is different. Every player is different, and their histories are different. But just overall, as a kind of a philosophy, how do you feel about moving players that maybe have played traditionally on the right to the left, and maybe players that have played traditionally on the left to the right side?
Yeah, I do think that it's not something you can take for granted. And, I think sometimes people do it. Like, look, I've never been somebody that's had my hand on the ground trying to block somebody. And I think I've talked about this with you guys in the past. But, the biggest athletic mismatch that exists in the National Football League is these insanely talented edge rushers and the 6'7", 320-pound tackle. Because look, you got the Jason Pierre-Pauls of the world, doing, handsprings and backflips and doing all that, right? Like these freakish athletes that look like they could be power forwards. And they're going against guys, and I've made this joke with you before, they're going against guys that wore T-shirts to the swimming pool because they were embarrassed when they're young. Like it's the biggest athletic mismatch that exists in the National Football League. The elite talented edge rusher and the big tackle. And so now you're saying to a guy, yeah, just go ahead and move over to the other side. You're like, wait a minute. Like, no, like there have been a lot of, time and skill and work to get to this point. So, I think that for me, would say, look, does that mean guys can't do it? No, it doesn't mean guys can't do it. But like, it's not for everybody. And I don't think it's something you can take for granted.
Now, Tim, this day brings about a lot of crazy things. We've seen the Laramie Tunsil gas mask situation, and ultimately that, sort of messed up his draft stock. He started to fall down.
Sorry, he likes to party.
Exactly. We saw, what happened with the kid, Lionel Collins with LSU, all the stuff that came up, and he ended up falling. What is one crazy draft day situation that you've experienced, whether it be on a team or sitting there and doing the draft on draft day?
I don't know that I have a crazy one. I think I told the story to you before, like I think, Matthias Kiwanuka, who was like the Giants had him as the highest rated player at 19. They didn't want to take him. They trade all the way back to, 32 or 1 or whatever it was. And he was still the highest rated player. And they basically were like, look, we're wasting our money in our scouting department if we don't take him. So like, there's that. I think the other one would be, I was a player at the Giants. This is, I guess, kind of interesting. I was a player at the Giants, and Ted Ginn Jr. was on a visit, and I just happened to be, working out that day, and so I was in the locker room, and he was on his phone talking to somebody. And I don't know if you remember this, but he was coming off of like a bad foot injury, and the Giants had him in. He was going to be a first-round draft pick, and I hear him on the phone telling somebody, like, I'm not even close to running right now. Like, I can't even put real weight on my foot. And I was like, man, it's kind of reckless to be having that kind of conversation in the team building. Like,
exactly.
I'm just a backup quarterback here, but like, what happens if, we had our general manager that was listening to you say that? So, yeah, I think those are, I've heard the things about, I don't know, like the pre-draft process. I think there are, usually some unique stories there. But, on draft day, as an undrafted guy, I kind of treat it in protest at times.
Last one for you, Tim, before we get you out of here. I'll put you on the hot seat. Who are the Titans selecting tonight? And with what pick?
Yeah, I think they stay where they are, and I think they take a tackle. And it's probably all.
That is we haven't heard that yet, Tim. That's new.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes like the obvious thing is the right thing, and it seems like that's the case, right? Like, I mean, like sometimes it's simple, and we don't need to make it harder, and the team doesn't need to make it harder than it should be.
Sometimes the Titans have a way of making things more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah, well, let's hope they don't. So, we can get a good draft.
Listen, I've heard D-Mase has kind of been on one the last few weeks, so we can't have them do something crazy and have him go crazy for another month. All right, like that won't be good.
It's good for content, but maybe
it's
not
great
the
for content.
best
Great
decision
for
for the
content.
football team. Tim Hasselbeck. Tim, do you have any draft coverage tonight that the people can tune into?
I do. I have post game, so as long as the Titans don't do something crazy, you catch me on Van Pelt Sports Center tonight after the draft.
Okay.
Don't hold your breath there because you never know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that one.
But we'll be tuning in after the draft. Tim, appreciate your time. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch up next week.
You got it. See you guys.
All right, appreciate it. Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst. I want to react to what Tim had to say there. Some takeaways. Plus, we threw a bunch of questions Tim's way about the offensive line, about Joe Alt. His prediction is the Titans take Joe Alt at 7. I think that feels very, very likely. But Joe Alt joined Jared on Stillman and Company yesterday, and one thing that he said kind of got my gears turning a little bit. We'll get into that coming up next. I do want to get into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to get in on the conversation. Your thoughts as we are just a few hours away from the NFL draft. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Let's talk about Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee that brings sports betting to a whole new level, people. And I mean that literally, okay? And I'm going to explain to you why. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to $1,000, no danger first wager. If your first bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports offer true odds on all parlays, people, and boosted same-game parlays for all Tennessee sports teams. That means boosted up to 20% over other books in Tennessee. Come on now. Don't nobody else do that but Zen Sports. And there's even more good news. You thought that was the end of it? Nah, we got more. Zen Sports offers a one-of-a-kind VIP reward program. If you qualify, you'll earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, you name it, even sport book bonuses. The VIP program is by invite only, so if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. So what are you waiting for, people? The daily game parlay boost go quick. So get going and download their app today at zensports.com. Zen Sports, where betting just got better. And remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Hey, don't miss Nashville's best 2024 NFL draft coverage on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Tonight, stop by Twin Peaks in Madison at 6 p.m. for live 2024 NFL draft coverage. Get the best draft coverage as we break down each pick at the home of the 29-degree beer. Coverage presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, ESPN Bet, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. We already have a texter in the text line. Coy in Clarksville texts in, says, does Jared Stillman have a meltdown on the air after the Titans make their selection? You'll be able to see that on the draft show tonight.
Yeah, you will actually be able to see it.
What are the odds? You know,
we need to get some odds.
The Caroline Fenton Sportsbook, minus 650.
Yeah,
Okay.
we need to get some type of thing going. You know, the odds of Jared having a meltdown, the odds of the Titans purposely making Jared have a meltdown. No,
Just to spite him.
just to spite.
How's he
No.
feeling about the hockey series, by the way? Didn't he say it was over after the first game?
Yeah, he said it was over. Did you expect him to say anything else?
No.
He said
Exactly.
Canucks in 5 after game 1.
Okay. So is he still saying that?
Well, I don't think so.
I don't know. I think he's sort of like.
But he might be saying the Canucks can't win in 5 unless the Predators win at least 1.
Yeah, you're right. There you go. So, yeah, where were we again? The draft.
Draft show.
Yeah, draft show.
But it's going to be a blast to come
Right.
hang out at Twin Peaks in
It'll
Madison.
be great, people.
So we were talking Joe Alt, and Tim Hasselbeck just joined the show, and he said, I think the Titans stay at 7 and take Joe Alt. I was hoping for some spicy tea in some of the final mock drafts that have been coming out today, and every single one of them says Joe Alt
They
to the Titans.
disappointed you.
Well, I mean, it's not even a disappointment. It's like, okay, I'm cool with that. But also, like, I'd like some tea here. I'd like some stirring of the pot. Like Rick Neuheisel.
The tea
is
would be if he
stirring the
doesn't,
pot.
if they don't take him, right? That would be tea.
If he's not available.
If we're on this show tomorrow and they've taken Alt, it will just be okay. That was it.
That's cool. All right. Left tackle. Thumbs up.
If they don't, then there'll be a lot of chatter.
That's some
right?
tea. So,
But as you know, Tim just said, sometimes the simplest, obvious thing is the way to go.
Occam's razor. Sometimes the simplest explanation or the simplest outcome is the correct one. But if it's not Joe Alt at 7, all
What
of
was
the
that
mock
reference
drives.
right there? I did.
Occam's razor?
Yeah, Occam's razor. Did I?
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor.
Okay.
OCC.
What LSU class was that? That you got? I was not familiar.
Was that a
Nick, did you
physics
know about
class
the
or something?
razor?
No, I'm not.
I didn't know about that
physics.
razor.
I'm taking physics in college. I'm not sitting here today.
Is it a
I'm not doing
physics
this
class?
stuff.
Is it a what kind of class are you gonna?
I think it's philosophy.
Philosophy. Okay.
Is that the same as a Gillette razor?
Could be. Could be. Yeah.
Occam's. What is it about Occam?
It's
Is that
the
a guy?
law. It's
Hey,
the law.
hold on,
that-
Willie. Hey, Willie. You see when she said that? This is how you kind of get through. You just say, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
Occam's razor. Yeah,
I know.
exactly.
got
Yeah,
you.
I know what you're talking
exactly.
As
Because
you
you listen
And
to
I'm
like,
wait a minute, I don't know what that is.
How did she use it in a sentence? Okay, I think I know what it means, but I ain't gonna say nothing. But yeah, I can raise absolutely.
Occam's razor is the philosophy that an event has 2 possible explanations. The explanation that requires the fewest assumptions is usually correct.
Right. So
Ah,
don't
there
talk
we go.
yourself out of the obvious.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
thing that feels the simplest and
Right.
most obvious is most likely the right one.
I'm sure we all had a teacher that said, "Go. You know, if you're taking a test, go with your first
Exactly.
thought. Right. Don't talk yourself out of
But what if
looks
you
like
didn't?
it's logical.
What if you didn't study at all?
That's a problem. That's a problem.
You go with C, D-Mace. You go with C.
Then I don't have a philosophy for you. I
Take
just-
C. That was another
Yep.
one that was a theory, right?
Take
just
C.
take
It's
more
C.
often
Carolyn's
than not
making us
C.
use our medulla oblongata today.
There you
I
go.
mean,
Somebody
There you
watched
go.
Waterboy.
Ah.
Yeah, dude.
There it is. That's why alligators are ornery. So
we
Joe
go.
Alt to the Titans.
Yes.
It feels like it feels like if he's there, they'll probably take him, and I have zero problem with it whatsoever. In fact, I would love it. But a lot of the mock drafts have, if it's not Joe Alt to the Titans at 7, they have him off the board at 5 to the Chargers. But I've just thought, I hear Jim Harbaugh and all of his yapping about building up the offensive line, but the Chargers have a left tackle. So why would they take Joe Alt and move him to right tackle if he's the best left tackle in this draft? But Joe Alt joined Jared on Stillman and Company yesterday, and he was talking about, can you play right? Can you play left? Like, where's the best position for Joe Alt? Jared asked him about that. This was Joe Alt.
Yeah, I definitely feel more comfortable at left tackle just because that's where the majority of my experience has been. I played left tackle all throughout college and have a lot of snaps there. So obviously I feel more comfortable there and know the position, better. But I knew kind of once the the draft process and the combine kind of started rolling around, there were some teams looking at me at right tackle. So I spent some time over there training that side, making sure I was comfortable. But, there will be a little bit of a transition phase to right tackle just because I'm used to, playing on left. We in the household and my dad always talk about it. It's a different side, completely different side, right side. All your footwork's, flipped and everything. So I think the biggest thing for me is if I do get chosen at a right tackle position, I got to go back to work and just kind of relearn the basics, the basic techniques, how to push out of my stance and things like that. But I would say overall, I feel more comfortable at left tackle just because I've had a lot of experience there.
So I think Joe Alt is doing what we all would probably do in a job interview and say, yeah, I would do it. Sure, you need me to clean the toilets? Sure,
Hey.
I'll do it. But deep down, it's actually like, I don't want to do that. But I'm just going to put my best foot forward and say whatever I can do to help the team. Everything that I have heard, all of the conversations that Joe Alt and his people have had behind closed doors, he'll say that, he'll say what he needs to say, but he's a left tackle. He's better at left tackle. He feels more comfortable at left tackle. And everything that I have heard is everyone in Joe Alt's camp has said, if you're taking Joe Alt, you need to put him at left tackle. So the Chargers can't take Joe Alt and put him at right tackle, right?
I mean, they can do what they want to, but I think that's why.
It wouldn't even be in their best interest.
Yeah,
I don't
it
think.
wouldn't. I mean, but you just never know with Coach Harbaugh. But I believe that's why Phil Yates and Daniel Jeremiah has, Latham going to the Chargers at 5th because they can put him on the right side. They already got Rashawn Slater on the left, who they drafted 3 years ago in the first round, a top 15 pick. So then why would you go back to the drawing board if you don't need to with a left tackle? So I think that's why people are now replacing Alt with Latham because, yes, they do need a right tackle. The Chargers do. So they can stay put, take Latham at 5, and then the Titans are all but teed up to take Alt at 7. It can happen that way. But I don't see the Chargers drafting Alt. I see them either moving out of that space or taking, either the left tackle, right tackle in Latham, or if Adunze is still at one of those receivers, they're still there, they may take one of those receivers. So, I think Alt falls to the Titans. Now, whether they draft him or not, or they choose to go with a different player that may be at that same, maybe at that spot, a receiver or something, that's up to them. That's something we don't know. But I think Alt will be there for them if indeed they want to draft him.
I said this in the first hour. I think the most intriguing thing for the Titans would be if McCarthy is still sitting there at 7 and Alt, the obvious pick, and maybe one of the receivers too. Then I think they're in a tremendous bargaining position that they would have to be intrigued of trying to move down, maybe still get Alt, even though as we've talked about many times leading up to this, if you trade down, you have to be prepared that you won't get the exact guy that you want. There's a chance you would, but you also have to say who else is guaranteed to be there and could we live with one of those picks. I think that's the most intriguing scenario that could present itself tonight. Otherwise, I think they just take Alt. I think Alt's going to be there at 7.
It feels like he is. I don't see a left tackle needy team trading up to leapfrog the Titans to take Joe Alt. This doesn't really make very much sense to me, the price that it would cost to leapfrog the Titans to take Joe Alt. Anyone that moves up, I think, is taking a quarterback or a team that's so desperate to get their hands on Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think the Chargers are taking Joe Alt. It doesn't make any sense at all for the Chargers to take Joe Alt at 5. So it does feel that way. But I'll ask you both a question that I posed to Jared and Joe yesterday on Jared versus Joe. At 7, either Alt or Malik Neighbors is there. Minnesota's offering you 11 and 23 for 7. You would have to pass up on either Malik Neighbors or Joe Alt. But would you do it?
For 23?
11 and 23.
Oh, yeah. I'd do it.
D-Mase,
100%. I would not hesitate. I'd say yes on the phone. I wouldn't even say, let me call you back. I would say, no, let's do it. Yeah, I'm in.
Willy is not a very good negotiator.
No.
Well, what's not to like
he's
about
like,
that?
hey, listen,
4 spots for an extra first-round pick?
Yeah.
What's not to like about
wouldn't
it is you wouldn't get alter neighbors.
Okay. But I'm still at 11. I'm not going, like we talked about one that we had a lot of reaction from, which was I forget who had it. but it involved going down to 28 and getting several more picks, right?
late.
That's a bigger drop. You're dropping 4 spots and getting a second first-round pick. I'm all over that. All over it.
I knew Willie would love it.
I love it.
Oh, wow. So
There-
11.
I'd be stunned if that ends up on the table.
So if Alt, you're saying if Alt is still there.
Either Alt
Alt
or Neighbors.
Oh, not or and? Just or?
Or.
If Alt.
One's off the board.
Okay, if Alt is there, then I'm moving off that space. Now I'm only willing
If Alt
to,
is there, you move off.
If Alt is there, because I'm only moving back a few spots, and I'm hoping I can still get him, but while also picking up extra picks. So if Alt is there, then I think you may want to move back a few spots if you believe you still can get him. If Alt's not there, I'm moving back. I'm taking, if it's Neighbors there or a Doomsday, whichever one, I'm moving back. I'm taking what Willy is offering, the 11 and the 22. I'm taking it, and then I am getting me an offensive lineman, and I'm getting me a receiver in the first round.
I would have a really hard time doing it.
I mean, if Alt's not there, then I'm moving.
And Neighbors is there? You pass on Neighbors?
I'm passing on Neighbors or a Doomsday because this draft is too deep where I can move back 11 and 23 and get my tackle and get my receiver that I want. I can get two birds with one stone right there. But I understand, you may be getting a better player at 7. I get that. But you're still getting, I feel you're still getting a good player, a guy that you believe that can be, 7 to 10 year starter. Because I look at the receivers as more of a 5 to 6 because of contracts. I look at tackles of more of a 7 to 15 because you're usually, if you got a good one, you usually re-sign those guys. Receivers
7 to 15 years, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Receivers is kind of iffy, because it's not all, because somebody may be willing to pay them a lot more, So if to me, if the receiver's there, Alt's gone, you move back. And you're still able to get your tackle and your receiver, I believe.
It's a hard offer to pass up.
Yeah.
2 first-round picks, but it's also 2 players that would be hard to pass up as well. I think I would reluctantly stick and pick and take my guy, but it'd be a hard one to pass up. We've got a bunch of thoughts on our text line. I want to get into your thoughts coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Also want to get into Willy's Vancouverin, I don't know if that's the right word, adventures. We'll do that coming up next as well. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063 The Game.
Okay, let's talk F&M Bank. They help us take it to the bank every Friday at 1:45. We have a great time with this segment. And F&M Bank, we've been getting the word out with them. Their sponsorship, we're so glad to have them aboard. They have, I think, a great mentality for financing practices in general. Regardless of what those needs are, it's called Banking Made Easy on Purpose. They want to simplify things for you. Your life is complicated. Your finances do not need to be complicated. So wherever you are in life, if you're a business owner, if you are just getting started in your financial life, if you're younger and just want to get a system going, they've got simple ways to do it, like the Smart Swipe debit card that they offer. You make a purchase with that debit card, they round up to the nearest dollar. So every time you use that card, if you make a purchase of $3.50, it's going to round up to $4. That 50 cents goes into your savings. And so without even doing anything, you're saving money every time you use that debit card. Just as one way that they make banking made easy on purpose. MyFMBank.com is where you want to locate the nearest branch of F&M Bank. There are 20 locations in our listening area. You're going to find one that's close to you, and you build that relationship. Their relationship means more to them than some of the bigger banks. So that's why we recommend F&M Bank. Go to myfmbank.com, equal housing lender.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are, what are we now, 6 hours away from the NFL draft going down tonight, and I want to get into your thoughts on the NFL draft, your questions, your predictions, your pre-draft thoughts. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get in on the conversation, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, unless we have some thoughts.
Let's go to them phones.
Let's get to the phones. Tyler texts in, says if the Titans trade back to 11, who is taking Alt before that 11th pick? I think you could look at a couple teams. You could, let's say if Alt is available at 7 and you trade back to 11, I think that the Jets could be in play for Alt, because I think the Jets look at this year as, what can we do to protect Aaron Rodgers? Protecting Aaron Rodgers is our number one priority. I also think the Bears could be involved at 9. I know that they signed Tyron Smith in free agency, but I don't know if Tyron Smith is going to be your 10 to 15 year solution at left tackle. You got a young quarterback. You have a young rookie quarterback. You want to be able to protect him. So I think there would be teams that would be in play for Joe Alt between 7 and 11.
Yeah, there will be, and that's where you have to make sure that you have your options ready to go. If indeed, say like the Jets choose to, take Alt. I don't think they'll take Alt. They have a pretty good left tackle in Smith. Actually, their left tackles are, their tackles are pretty good. Not great, but they're good. So I'm not sure that the Jets would, go that route as far as getting a left tackle. Now, getting an offensive lineman, that may be different. But do you draft an interior offensive lineman that high? I don't know, So I wouldn't be worried about the Jets getting Alt. I wouldn't be worried about Minnesota getting Alt. They have their tackle as well. The only team that you figure, even the Chargers, they have their tackle only person I think you would possibly think would take a tackle is the Chargers, and it doesn't seem like they're going to take a left tackle. It seems like they would take more so of a right tackle. They just drafted a left tackle that's pretty good 2 years ago.
We're really in silly season now.
Oh, whoa.
Larry
What
Texan.
we got?
Would you trade your first round draft pick for Jamar Chase?
No.
Yes, but nobody is making that trade.
Yeah. I think the answer would be yes.
Yes,
that was another one that I would not hang up the phone. I would say yeah.
Yeah, I will take Jamar Chase.
With Callahan? Oh, yeah.
You can have the 7th overall pick, and I wouldn't lose an ounce of sleep over it. The odds of that happening?
Zero?
Slim. Okay,
cool. 0 to
0.000%
yeah,
chance.
so you have a 0%
chance. Yeah. Okay, cool. Glad we're on the same page here.
Wait, what if you round up? You still
Zero.
zero.
It's goose egg. Thank you. Jack's on the line with a question on the draft. What's up, Jack?
Well, tonight's when it finally gets interesting. So far, all the mock drafts and everything, it's all blue sky. Who knows? So it's going to be interesting to see how the teams play the game, as who's available, who's going to make a deal, constantly changes. That's the fun part for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your call, Jack.
Yeah, that is the sort of the cat and mouse. Outside of the first pick, any pick after that is a wait and see pick. Like, oh, okay, because even with the second pick, you don't know if Washington is going to take Drake May or if they're going to take Jaden Daniels.
Well, there's an overwhelming, odds on the sports books of Jaden Daniels to Washington, but also there was so much talk about Indianapolis loving Will Levis last year.
Exactly.
And then they ended up taking Anthony Richardson. So, the apparent love that the Commanders have for Jaden Daniels could be a total and complete smokescreen.
Yeah, and they could love you all the way up till they draft somebody else. So they can love you all the way up until that point where they give away that card to be called out who they're drafting. So, but I think the interesting parts are going to start at 2, even though we do assume it's going to be a quarterback, but we don't know which quarterback. And then after 2, do New England take a quarterback? Do they move out of that spot far enough down where they could possibly get a J.J. McCarthy and still pick up another first-round pick, in probably next year's draft or a second rounder in this year's draft. So, to me, the draft is going to be I'm looking after the first pick. That's when the draft starts.
I think the most intriguing thing tonight will be who can trade down and still get the player that they wanted. Who trades down effectively will be the story of the draft. Because I think we'd all be surprised if there's no trades. If it just goes like last year's NHL draft in Nashville, we were like, okay, here come the trades. There's all these rumors. Skarhoff could get traded. The Predators are trading up. Barry Trotz's like, yeah, I put some stuff on the table. I put some uncomfortable stuff on the table. There were 0 trades at the end of the night in the first round. We were all like, what the heck? We heard all this buzz and nothing happened. I'd be surprised if that happened tonight. True?
I wouldn't.
Somebody's trading up. Somebody's doing something.
I wouldn't be surprised if there are 3 trades in the top 10 alone.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't be surprised to see.
So more like an NBA first-round draft.
Yeah, like
except that you're allowed to know who the players are. Remember, like they've agreed to this draft, they've agreed to this trade. We can't tell you why, but this is who it is. Like the Woj bombs, all those things.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota trades with Arizona, and then Arizona tries to get back into the top 5 to get Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that is the smart move.
Yeah, if you can do it, because you still would come out on the upper end.
Collect some extra picks.
Yeah, collect some picks.
Trade some of those picks to get back in the top 5. I mean, you hold on to a couple of picks, you still get your guy. I think that's the smart one. All right, coming up next, what does this draft mean? Like, how important is it for Rand Carthon to get this draft right? Is it the draft? We'll get into that coming up next, and of course your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and The Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live. And we're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. NFL draft going down tonight. We'll have our draft show starting at 6 p.m. at the Twin Peaks in Madison. And the draft, it's supposed to start at 7, but we all know it's probably going to start at like 7:30 because they're going to have the pomp and the circumstance and the hoopla and the, the edited videos and all of the people that come up to the podium. So it's really going to be like 7:30. But
plenty of other games on that tide you over. Just flip
absolutely.
around. Flip around.
And we've got the the pre-draft show, the draft show that starts at 6 o'clock as well. But looking at this draft, it feels like a lot weighs on this draft. Just to how important is not just the first round pick, but this draft as a whole. And more specifically, the first round pick for Ran Carthon, for Will Levis, for this team as a whole.
I think it's very important. From this standpoint, if you listen to Ran, you would think this was his first draft.
Well, he said it feels like his first draft.
Feels like his first draft. So if you're listening to him, okay. So if this is indeed your first draft, even though technically it's not, you want to get it right. This team is headed in a different direction. And to me, and I think I said this last year, and I pointed to this year, because everything to me points toward 2027, going into that building. They want to have a team that is as Super Bowl ready as it can possibly be when they walk into that stadium. Because last thing you want to do is walk into that stadium without a competitive team. And I'm talking about a highly competitive team. You built this $1 billion stadium. You're asking people to pay to get in it. You better have a damn good team when that thing opens.
Tens of thousands for PSLs.
So everything points toward 2027. So to me, this is, since you said last year, really it wasn't, because you're saying this year's my first year. Well, if this is your first year, you have to first, what is it? Your first impression is sometimes the lasting or the only impression you get. Well, you need to make a good first impression if you were saying this is your first draft. Whoever you draft, we need to look at it and say, okay, you got it right. We don't have to worry about that position or positions moving forward. If there's still some head scratching, not just by us, because, obviously in the big scheme, we don't. But if there's really head scratching, the consensus is like, what did they do? You're going to have a big problem.
But also, let's be fair here, because this isn't Rand's first draft.
Oh, I know it's not his first draft.
But if the draft last year, like let's say Will Levis does become the quarterback of the future, Rand deserves credit for that.
Of course.
Because he was the general manager when they picked. But also, he's not going to be let off the hook if that draft doesn't come to fruition, which it looks right now after a year, a pretty solid draft. Looks like Will Levis is your starting quarterback. I think Tajay Spears is going to be a big part of this offense moving forward. You've got your left guard, ideally, for the next 10 years. So, to be completely fair to Rand, if that draft hits, he gets the credit for it. And if it doesn't, he does get the blame for it. That it's not his first draft. It's the first draft with Brian Callahan.
And that's why, to me, you have to get this draft right, because it's the first in regards to this whole slate is clean for everybody. New head coach, new personnel, everything is clean. You got a new title, everything is clean. So you need to, or y'all need to get this draft right. We need to look back in 2 or 3 years and say, okay, that draft was a draft that jump-started, this team to where they're at now. Even though it should have been the year prior when they drafted Will Levis and they drafted Peter Skoronski and Tajay Spears and Wiley and those guys. It should have started last year. But because of the circumstance, they're pointing to more of this year. Well, if you're pointing to this year as your first draft, I'm saying this in quotations, then you need to get it right. Your first draft, you've had enough time to evaluate everything. You had enough time. You had a year to evaluate your team, to know exactly what you need and what you don't need. So after all of that time, if you don't get it right, you are to blame. So to me, this starts, and they have to. There's no if, ands, there's no, oh, well, we think they got it right. No, we got to look and say, right now on paper, they've gotten it right. Now, the play is something different.
Yeah.
But on paper, if we look, we got to say they got this thing right.
I would say that in the big vision of let's say the stadium opens in 2027, is that what we're thinking?
Yeah.
If they don't draft well between now and then, they won't have a good team. And
No.
Rand Carthon will not be the general manager. That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
That is the reality. So every draft is big. That the free agents are nice. Like we've been saying, that's really the icing on the cake. They've done some things to plug some holes, but those are really short term. Those aren't going to be the moves that help you in 2027. They have to make the picks that they're going to want to reinvest in 2025, 2026. Get that next contract. That's how you build a good team. That's how you get a winner. And obviously, everything swings if the quarterback hits, if Levis hits. But let's not discount the Mike Vrabel era, the John Robinson era, which is now, we've closed the book on it. They won a lot of football games without the great quarterback, right? And that was pretty good. There's nothing to sneeze at there. But this is a new regime, and you've got to draft well to be a good team in 2027. That would be my goal. I'd have that 2027 new stadium open. I'm Rand Carthon. How do I get a chance to sit in that suite, the general manager's suite, wherever you sit, and say, this is my team that I've built over the last few years? That would be the goal.
And it's not even just, okay, 27, now we're good.
Yeah.
It's you need to have
It's a build up.
promise.
Yeah.
You're
it
building.
needs-
You're
it's
building.
build
That
up.
you
Yeah.
need to be good in 2027.
Yeah.
So people want to spend the tens of thousands of dollars on PSLs that you're asking for in this new stadium.
And let's not mistake, that doesn't mean you're rebuilding for the next
No,
4 years.
Exactly.
You can't. You're gone by then.
You'd be gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you have to be building through the draft a good young nucleus that's going to be around that you're reinvesting in, and not just redoing everything. You're trying to make over your team every offseason. That's just not a great recipe for success.
The reason why this team and this roster is in the position that it's in is because it's been a recent history of bad draft picks, and the draft picks that you have hit on, you haven't kept around. I mean, we can go through the long list of the 2020 draft, how the 2021 draft gave you essentially nothing. You trade away A.J. Brown. Your replacement for A.J. Brown and Treylon Burks hasn't given you anything since he's gotten here. I mean, we can go through the laundry list of missteps and bad drafts and bad decisions made by the last regime. But the reality is, the reason why your roster is in the position where it's in, where you have very little depth and you have very positions of need addressed, is because the Titans haven't drafted well. This team is in a pivotal position. This franchise, I think, is in a very pivotal position where you need to rebuild that. You can't afford to make missteps. You need to rebuild that foundation, and it starts in the draft of left tackle. All right, we're going to take our left tackle here, and that's going to be our left tackle for the next 10 to 15 years. And it's also the short term as well. We can look ahead to 2027. We can look ahead to, okay, this draft class and the next 2 to 3 draft classes. That's going to be your foundational pieces for ideally the next 10 to 15 years. But also, you need to know the right now. Is Will Levis your quarterback?
Yeah, that's
you don't know that yet.
Yeah, you don't know. And this is the season you need to have a definitive answer as the season's going on.
Well,
or
okay,
at
but
the end.
that's a really great question. These are the coming attractions, right?
Exactly.
Marcus Mariota after year 1, after year 2, after year 3, we were still having that question.
Yeah,
is he gonna get there? Because he was doing just well enough to be like, he might get there. He still might. I was the guy saying, I think he's gonna get there. You guys were a little bit more like, I don't know, I don't think so. And then obviously he did not get there, and they pulled the plug. And they pulled a rabbit out of the hat to get Ryan Tannehill and the production they got out of him. So I'm just saying, with Levis, I don't know what we're going to know after this year. I'd like to. I'd like to be able to say this is where it's going. But Mariota, he teased you, right? And Levis could. He could.
And that's the reason why the decision needs to be – you need to know next year. I think you do, because you can't hold on – well, you can. But he's not a first round, so you can't hold him under this contract for extra years. He's a second rounder, so he gets to go to free agency a little bit early. So you need to know. I think by the end of the season, I don't need to be in a situation that I was in with Marcus Mariota, where I'm still trying to figure out, like, damn it, is he
was
the
the
guy?
classic limbo.
Yeah, is he the guy? Is he not? If I still haven't question mark on you, I'm drafting somebody.
And quarterback purgatory is the most frustrating place to be in. So I think at the end of this season, and of course it hasn't happened yet, but at the end of the season, if you still have questions of whether Will Levis is the guy or not, the answer is probably no.
But see,
do we have questions about C.J. Stroud being the guy in Houston?
No, we don't have questions.
No questions. He's the guy.
And I say that because the quicker you figure out whether Will Levis is your guy, the better it makes your team.
Yeah.
Because if he shows you he's the guy, he elevates everybody else. Everybody else's play is going to be elevated. If you're still in this sort of question mark phase, you need to move on. Because you don't have time. This is the reason why you don't have time. C.J. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, and Anthony Richardson. And that's just in your division.
Yeah, we can go throughout the entire AFC.
We can go through the AFC, and it puts you even further behind. You don't have time to sit back and figure out like you had to with Marcus Mariota, and you finally figured out after 4 years he's not. And you just happen to luckily, fall into Ryan Tannehill. Had you not fallen into Ryan Tannehill, you may be still in quarterback purgatory. It may be even worse. So if I don't know by this year, then I need to move. I just need to move on. I think they will with Will Levis, but if they don't, I need to move on because you're putting yourself further and further behind those three teams that already in their mind have their quarterback. So this year, the draft, to me, they need to get it right, and what helps them get it right is Will Levis. If he produces the way they believe he can produce, then that gives us a little leeway with everything else. Because once you have that quarterback, you can kind of play with some other things.
And also vice versa.
Yeah.
That if you hit on this year's draft, let's say with the first 2 picks, you get your left tackle and a really solid receiver that you feel good about. Just saying hypothetically. Well, if you hit on those 2 picks, that's going to make Will Levis better.
Yeah.
And then you might feel a little bit better about the quarterback that you do have that might be elevated by the pieces around him. But then you feel better about the quarterback and you feel like you might have a more permanent solution there. So I think it works both ways.
Yeah. So they have to. They have to get it right because they're trying to build this team back up. The last 2 years, they've been depleted of talent underneath the starters. And in this league, any professional league, you got to have more than just your frontline guys because especially like football and hockey where it's a rough and tough sport, and guys get injured, if you haven't built up that roster, then you're going to be in the same boat you were in last year and the year before that. Guys going down. Like, I'm good if my 11 guys are playing on defense and offense, they don't get hurt. We're fine. But the minute one guy drops off or 2 guys drop off, that's where we have a problem. So they need to build this roster back up. That's why I said they need to get it right. Free agency doesn't build this roster up. Free agency helps in the short term, in the immediate. The draft helps in the long term. The draft helps you build this roster back up, and that's where the Titans need to be. They're in a position right now where they need to build this roster back up.
That's exactly why I would applaud them if they can trade down effectively and get more picks. Because the more picks, the better shot you have of that building the roster the way you want. I will not shake my head if they just take Alt or whoever they like at 7, but if I will be impressed if they can trade down and get an extra pick like that, an extra first-round pick. Oh my gosh, yes! But extra second, extra third, I'm still in on that. I'm looking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the one thing that they cannot do, there are a lot of things that they can do that I'm like, okay, cool. If they stick at 7 and take Alt or Neighbors or even a defensive player in Dallas Turner, like I'm cool with that. If they trade back, still find their left tackle, a certified starting left tackle in the NFL, like I'm good with that. One thing that I can't live with is if the Titans do in fact stay at 7 and take a player that we don't view as maybe a top 7, 8, 9, 10 player in this year's draft. Like we started the show talking about J.C. Latham. So much smoke about J.C. Latham to the Chargers. Daniel Jeremiah's most recent mock draft. Charles Robinson went on with Robbie and Rexford this morning and talked about J.C. Latham to the Chargers. I wouldn't be cool with that if I was a Chargers fan. J.C. Latham at 5, if one of those great receivers is available, which is more than likely going to be the case at 5, that's what I can't live with, is one of these players maybe like an Olu Fashanu. And that's nothing against him as a player, but I feel like you can trade back, assuming that you have a trade partner, trade back and still get a player like that. So that's what I'm not on board with, is a player that's not considered, quote-unquote, elite at 7.
Yeah, well, if that is indeed the case, then I'm sure if they don't, so, okay, what if it's Brock Bowers? Because you mentioned.
I'm cool with Brock Bowers.
Because you mentioned Neighbors and you said one of the 3 wide receivers.
Yeah.
Or if they were there, then you would draft him. But, so you would, if Bowers was there, you would draft him as well.
I would take him.
Okay.
Or at least I wouldn't be upset at all with the
Exactly.
pick. And if Bowers was on the board at 7 and you trade back and you end up, let's say, with Fashanu at 11, I don't have a problem with that either. But I would have no problem with Bowers at 7. Like we talked to TD on Monday, he said he thinks Brock Bowers is elite.
I don't think there's any player at that 7th spot, even Alt, if he's there, there's not one player in this year's draft that would, because I don't have the first pick in the draft or the second. So there's no player outside that first pick, maybe that second, that I'm sticking there no matter what. If Alt's there, if Neighbors there, if Adunze's there, if Bowers there, Dallas Turner's there, if the return is big enough, I'm taking it. If there are enough picks, I'm moving out of that spot. I don't think there's, even though I do think there are like 7 guys that are, okay, you draft them, and more than likely they will have good careers. I know there are 7 guys possibly like that. But outside of that first pick, that quarterback, I don't think there's any guy outside of that that's going to make, like, I'm staying there no matter what. Now, I know what the Titans said. They've said if a player, they do have some players on their board, like if he's there, I'm taking him no matter what. But I'm not. Because if you're willing to give up the farm and some to come up to the 7th pick, here, take it. Here, have it. What you giving me? Okay. I can still move down and get a bunch of players that I need. So I'm not hell-bent on staying in that 7th pick, even though, it's like, okay, if Alt's there, I need a tackle. All right, nobody's offering much. I'm taking Alt, But if they're offering way beyond what I thought I was going to get, then I'm taking it. And I'm moving down. And I'm still able to get guys that I want that can help this football team.
That's what brings up the big question of, is the value of more picks greater to me than the value of this player that I can get right here? And that totally depends.
It depends, yeah.
It depends on the players that are available. It depends on the return that you're getting. I always go back to the 2020 draft that the Bengals came out and said, oh, yeah, we got so many offers for the first overall pick, but we didn't care. We don't care if it was your first-round pick for the next 50 years. There is nothing that anyone could have offered us to get us to move off that first overall pick, to get us to give up the possibility of getting Joe Burrow. Obviously, that's not what the situation that the Titans are in. Obviously, the Titans are going to get Joe Burrow. Obviously, I'm sure if the Titans were offered 50 first-round picks that they would take it. But just kind of using that logic, I do think that there are players available, like they said, that, look, we don't care what you're giving us. We're not moving off of this pick. Want to continue this conversation. Want to get into some of your thoughts as well. But coming up next, Max Hers will join us. We'll get his takeaways, what he saw from morning skate, his takeaways from what he saw in the first 2 games, what needs D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
All right, let's talk Lone Pronto, and let's tell you about the dream of waking up this time in about a week or so and being 100% debt-free from credit cards, car loans, and personal loans, the way to do it is through Loan Pronto's Equity Express line of credit. They can make it happen. And you're saying, well, wait a minute. Well, I'm doing one, I'm doing the other. Why do this way? Because you're going to get a better interest rate through your home's value and your home's equity. And you're going to get rid of the high interest loans that are really bogging down your budget. Loan Pronto's done the research. The average homeowner going through the Express Equity line of credit saves over $850 per month doing this. So go through Loan Pronto, because not only are you going to get the money, you're going to get it fast. They have a great system. Loan Pronto has an AI-based system. It's digital. You can get approval in about 10 minutes in a lot of cases with almost no documentation, no appraisal, and no hassle. So don't wait any longer. Get the process started. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, equal housing lender.
Quick note before we get to Max Hers. Diana Rossini tweeted, The Rams, who haven't picked in the first round since 2016, are calling to get into the top 10 per sources. The Rams are really taking the true F them picks approach.
Yeah.
Haven't had a first round pick in almost 10 years, and now they're willing to trade off the rest of them. Looks like the Rams are looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, they need to find one. Did they have one?
Stetson Bennett.
Yes, that's damn Skippy. He was balling before he got hurt.
Skippy.
Yeah, damn Skippy. You ain't never heard that?
No.
Yes.
The skipper?
Yeah, the Skippy. It's damn Skippy. You're right.
That's are you? I'm convinced that D-Mase is Stetson Bennett's agent. That he's getting a cut off of all the Stetson
The
Bennett
Titans should have
conversation.
drafted Stetson Bennett. I told y'all they should have drafted him.
Rams always up to something. So yet another thing to watch for the first round of the NFL draft going down tonight. Again, all of your NFL draft coverage starting at 6 p.m. right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. But we had morning skate today. Predators game 3 tomorrow night coming back to Bridgestone Arena taking on the Vancouver Canucks. Series now tied 1-1. Joining us now to break it all down is Max Hers. Max, you were out at morning skate today. We heard the news. Juuso Parssinen has been recalled from Milwaukee. Why? What's the tea there? What's going on with Juuso Parssinen?
Doesn't look like he's going to play in the games this weekend, but he is here, and Andrew Brunette said after practice it's to have him in depth, and if they're going to want to use him later on, they want to make sure he's up to speed with everything the team's doing for a little bit of a longer term. So he played very well in Milwaukee. He's back, not expected to play over the weekend, not really expecting any lineup changes from the Game 2 win, and why would you after that one? But Parssinen is here, so good to see him again, good to have him back.
One thing I think of is I think at age 23, I think he just turned 23 in February. He's still a big part of the big picture, so I think that's sort of a feather in his cap there. Let's have him around. But also, I'm told, and you may be able to verify this, Milwaukee doesn't play for a while, right? He can come spend some time here. I think they have a bye in the first round.
So I think he's going to stay.
But regardless,
I don't know that for sure.
Just not play for Milwaukee in the first round?
So the teams that will be playing Milwaukee are 2 games into a best of 3.
Okay.
So that series ends soon, and they'll get started soon. So I think it's independent.
So
from
this
all
might
that.
overlap Milwaukee's opening of the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't. Based on what Andrew Brunette said today, I don't think he's going back down.
Gotcha.
But I mean, this is far from the biggest storyline going into Game 3.
Now, obviously, Vancouver is still dealing with not having their Demko in net. What adjustments do you see them potentially making, and what adjustments do you see the Nashville Predators making? Because that news happened sort of late. So I know they had to sort of scramble around, and they had it probably in order, ready to go, but it still was a late addition. How do you think it changes now that the Predators know that Demko's not for sure and they've had time to prepare for this?
I think it's a great equalizer in the series, and I don't think it's necessarily going to change a ton of what either team does. Mm-hmm. I think the Predators' points of emphasis are going to be the same, which is get back on home ice, gives you a chance to play some more offense, to have the puck more, to get the line matching that you want. But I think you felt the difference in game number 2, right? I mean, I didn't think DeSmith looked very good in that game. He wasn't tested a ton, and I think the Predators won a game against a backup goalie. They did. And I think another big thing in that game, too, was Tyler Myers was out sick for the Canucks, and you felt the difference on their second pair with Noah Juleson taking his place. Juleson took 2 penalties in the game. He was the guy who let Philip Forsberg get a step on his goal. So I imagine Myers will be back. I think the Canucks are practicing right now here in Nashville, so we'll find out shortly if he's out there. But those were 2 game-changing absences for sure, and I think the Preds, I mean, they said they're not going to change anything because of it. They don't change anything based on who's in net, but they do an in-depth scouting report, of course, and I just think against a second goalie, you have a much better chance of taking this series long or winning it as it goes on, and it's an amazing equalizer for the Predators.
Do you see any change in the power play? Because the last 2 games, the power play hasn't been good.
Yeah, I think game 2 it wasn't much of a factor because those 2 late ones, they were just trying to kill the clock there. But yeah, game 1, they wanted more urgency. They wanted more puck movement. I thought it was fine in game 2, but I think they'll stick with the main units. They really like Evangelista on there. I think the only potential change they would make would be to add Novak, but I I don't see that happening as long as Evangelista continues to play well 5-on-5. I think they like him as that fifth power play guy.
Okay.
Stepping away from game 2, Max Hurst is with us. I said, look, there's two different ways that you can look at this game, and they're both true. That one, you found a way to win. And that's all that matters in the playoffs. You won. You stole a game on the road. You get to come back to Bridgestone Arena with the series tied, and that's huge. Other side is you basically had the puck in your own zone for a majority of the game, and we were talking about this earlier. I said, I don't even want to look at the time of possession because I feel like it was 99.9% Canucks. So have you seen maybe that be the approach in morning skate of just you got to hold on to the puck? And I think specifically Philip Forsberg has been a big topic of conversation. Game 1, he didn't look like Philip Forsberg. First period, and really first and third periods from Philip Forsberg in Game 2, he didn't give you Philip Forsberg contributions. He had a beautiful goal in the second period, but that's kind of aside from that, hasn't been giving you much. So what has the focus been on maybe specifically on Philip Forsberg if he was practicing? And 2, just creating more offense, keep holding on to the puck.
Yeah, I think once you're back on home ice, you get a little bit more jump and a chance to have the puck more. But when you're leading in the third period by 2 goals on the road against a top team, they're going to have so much desperation that you just can't match, and all you can do is block every shot you possibly can. And the Preds were in shot lanes, I thought, a ton in games 1 and 2, and Willy can attest to this too. I thought the Canucks had a lot of high danger chances where they just missed the net because the Predators, even though they let them get to the high danger area, were in the shot lane. So I think if you're going to have to defend, the Predators were built to do that the right way. Obviously, you hope to not have to win another game this series like that. And a lot of that does run through Forsberg in terms of having the puck in the offensive zone. And I think a lot of that will come back with the return to home ice. But you can't be too picky about, as an underdog, how you win this series against a top offensive team in the Canucks.
I think it's interesting to look at the first 2 games now that the dust is settled. I think if you're Vancouver, you're coming in here and you're probably thinking, I really like what we're doing. If we keep doing what we're doing, this is the formula for winning the series. Because they've had the puck more, they've had more shots, more chances, and they're sort of doing their thing. They're neutralizing Nashville's best weapons to a large degree. If they can continue on this path, I think they will take their chances even without Thatcher Demko. And they're the favorite in the series. They're right where they want to be, I think, in a lot of ways. But if you're Nashville, too, you're saying, we haven't played great in our first 2 games, and in theory, could have won both of the games. If it weren't for a massive 12-second turnaround and the shock that went after that in a hostile environment, that you could have stolen 2 games, right? So I agree with you, Max. You can't apologize for how things have gone. They've done a lot of good things, and I think just because they have given up a lot of possession, you have to give them credit for defending as well as they have. Like Michael McCarron, Kiefer Sherwood, Cole Smith, they have been in their own end a lot because they've gone against a lot of tough matchups like JT Miller's line. But they've defended really well. Now the question is, how can they just have the puck more? I think that's what everybody's going to be looking for in a general sense in games 3 and 4. Can they just have the puck more? Because when you have the puck, you don't have to defend.
Yeah, and I think the Preds didn't play their best in either game, but like you said, Willie, they could have won either game. So if they continue to improve at points throughout the series, I think it's limitless how good they can be here because they haven't played their best, but they hung around on the road, found a way to get a split, and now you come home and you hope you look like what you want to look like here in the next 2 games.
Another guy that we haven't talked about a whole lot in the first 2 games is Roman Josi, and Quinn Hughes has looked like the Quinn Hughes to a large degree that he did all season long. He constantly is having the puck. He possesses the puck more than anybody in the game, especially in the offensive zone. And you can see what that does to the opposition. It just makes it hard because when he's got it, obviously your team doesn't have it. He's a very tough guy to forecheck. He's a very tough guy to take the puck away from. So it's not like you're just going to full court press him. He wants you to come at him, right? Come at me. I'll just go around you. And now it's 5-on-4, and we'll create things on the other end of the ice. So on the other side, Nashville's got their dynamic defenseman, Roman Josi, who has not been as noticeable in the first 2 games. And if you really look back the 3 meetings in the regular season, he didn't have great games against them either. Now, that was a long, long time ago before he really hit his stride to become like Norris level. But I'm wondering what Yossi's got up his sleeve or what the team does in these next couple of games. Because you just think about some of these great moments you've seen from Yossi, especially at home down the stretch where he's just taking the team on his back, taking over games. We'll see if that could happen. But Vancouver's tough to do it against.
Yeah, and Yossi's had to defend a lot, which is fine because him and McDonough, him and McDonough are all good in those defense-only type situations. So, I mean, you want him with the puck on his stick, transitioning, getting up into the offensive zone, and we had moments of it in those first 2 games where we saw it. That slap shot that went crossbar and out in game 1, like it's there. So.
And if that goes in, how different the
Right.
span of that game is. But you can also say the same thing about Elias Pettersson.
Yeah.
How many times did he just narrowly miss a wide open net in game 2?
Well, the crazy part is about the one at the end of the first period, the power play shot where he one-timed it off the side of the goal. He was out there at morning skate, Elias Pettersson was, for the Canucks, practicing that shot for 15 minutes. And apparently he does that every day. And I guess he's just, I don't know, very picky or mental about his one-timers and where the puck comes and all this stuff. But like Willy said, I mean, Yossi at the beginning of the season is not the same as Yossi now. Pettersson was a monster in those regular season games for the Canucks, and something has negatively flipped with him since then. So the Predators will take that all day. But yeah, it's a different player than the guy who had the hat trick against the Preds in October.
Pettersson's a big name to think about over these next couple of games because he is an elite player. During that time, as Max mentioned, he had a hat trick against the Predators. A big story throughout the season is, are they going to be able to re-sign him to a long-term deal? Because they've got salary cap stuff. They went all in with the Elias Lindholm trade, right, which cost them a lot of capital and things like that. They also have gone from JT Miller and Brock Besser sort of on the trade block. Can we trade one of these guys to, those guys are doing pretty well, let's keep them. But they have some salary cap questions. And the biggest one was, is Pettersson going to sign long-term? Because he's young and he's got the high ceiling. He's already put up, 3 30-goal seasons, 3 80-point seasons. At his age, it's really, really good. But he hasn't been locked in. Is he feeling a little pressure of now having the big deal where he's guaranteed $92, $93 million going forward? I don't know. Rick Tocchet, I'm sure, is going to do his best, Max, to try to calm him down. But those are a lot of the questions, right? You and I were in the press conferences listening in on Tocchet. He's getting peppered with questions about Pettersson.
Yeah, I think...
And Pettersson is getting peppered with questions in his locker stall.
I'm sure.
I'm sure he's having a blast answering those, yeah.
I would maybe delete Twitter off my phone if I were
I think the Preds are in the better place mentally right now because of things like that. The Preds know who they've got. They're happy with how everybody's playing. They got their number 1 goalie. I just think the Preds are in their zone, and the Canucks have a lot going on that, I mean, big picture, like you would never expect Demko to go down, but he did miss a month towards the end of the season. Supposedly it was a different injury than what he's dealing with right now, but it's stuff like that made me think the whole time, hey, the Canucks are probably the best matchup of any potential division winner for the Preds.
Max Hers, appreciate you for stopping by. Before we let you go, official prediction for Game 3.
Oh, God. I haven't thought about it game by game. My pre-series prediction was Preds in 6. Can I just keep that?
Sure.
And that speaks for itself.
That's
on
allowed.
And your coverage starts when? Tomorrow for radio stuff.
5:30, and D-Mase will be yelling at me that I haven't made a prediction yet, apparently.
D-Mase also picked Preds in 5. So if you
I
want to
picked
be
Preds
bold,
in
you're not
5,
going to be
man.
bold nearly as bold as D-Mase is.
I'm about that life, man. I want the smoke. Bring it.
Let's
Predators
go.
at 5. Let's go.
All right, appreciate it. Max will be tuning into the pregame show on Friday. Max, appreciate you for stopping by.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll catch up with you soon. Coming up next, our friend Ali Melnicki from Zen Sports will join us. We'll get all the draft tea, or at least what the sports books are saying about the draft tonight. We'll do that with Ali coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are so close to the NFL draft that we can taste it just a few hours away. Joining us now, giving us her best bets of the week and best bets of the draft is our friend Allie Melnicki from Zen Sports. Allie, appreciate you for joining us. Just curious, what are the odds looking like on Zen Sports for 4 quarterbacks to go in the top 4, and how much money is going in on that prop bet?
Yeah, I could tell you that the over is definitely 4.5 for quarterbacks to go in the first round alone. A lot of people taking the over because after you have Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, a lot of people are looking at Michael Penix Jr. to go to the Raiders. So that's a bet I like. I would take the over 4.5 for quarterbacks to go in the first round.
So about a month or so ago, the Chargers' odds to take a quarterback were like 100-1. Like it was crazy. And the last that I've checked, the odds for J.J. McCarthy to be the 5th overall pick, of course the Chargers do have the 5th overall pick, it was like plus 180. Like the odds have shifted like crazy. Curious, your thoughts on that of, potentially the Chargers taking a quarterback, and is there anyone that's biting on that on the sports book?
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance J.J. McCarthy goes number 5 overall, but not to the Chargers. I think the Vikings trade up and snag him.
We'll talk with Allie Melnicki, Zen Sports. Now, Allie, you said that, the money is on quarterbacks going to first 4 picks. Now, in that second pick, because we all believe that Caleb Williams will be going first, who's the money going on to go second? Is it Drake May or is it Jaden Daniels?
Jaden Daniels for sure. I think everyone is getting to the consensus that it is going to be Jaden Daniels. He's the Commander's guy. He's going to fit very well in that Cliff Kingsbury offense. Kingsbury's very used to working with someone of his stature, so I think Daniels number 2 is the near lock.
Now, what does the numbers look like as far as receivers, the top 3 receivers going in the top 10?
Yeah, that one's a definite. I think that's a very favorable odds for that to happen. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Ozuna. Those 3 are going to be gone before the 10th overall pick. Look at the Bears to maybe get Rome Ozuna with the 9th pick. Giants, sitting at number 6. I hope we don't trade up for a quarterback. We really need a receiver. So I hope we get either Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors for sure.
Now, what are the odds that a defensive player goes in the top 10?
They're pretty high. If you're looking at Atlanta with that number 8 pick, Atlanta needs very much a lot of help on defense, so they're pretty good at defensive either lineman or defensive back will go in the top 10.
Okay, Allie, any other fun prop bets that you would just throw out there? If somebody just wants to have a good time tonight, they want to follow the draft, and they want to have a little something going with it. Is there anything else that we haven't covered so far that you might throw out there that might be fun?
Well, you wouldn't be able to cash it till later in the weekend, but what's the position of Mr. Irrelevant going to be? That pick has taken a lot of spotlight since Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. So if you think it's going to be a wide receiver, a quarterback, linebacker, cornerback, offensive lineman, or a defensive lineman, that's a pretty fun one to take. All of those odds are plus odds, so really good value if you want to toss a few bucks to see who's going to be Mr. Irrelevant this year.
One away from the draft, and I know that's all the focus tonight, but I'm just curious if you've looked at Allie with Thatcher Demko being hurt for the Canucks. I know the Canucks, who won their division, were a favorite over the Predators starting the series. I mean, obviously it's probably changed the odds, but how much of that has that changed the odds for the Predators series against the Canucks with the series 1-1, but Demko very doubtful to play over the next several games?
Yeah, that changed a lot, especially since home ice advantage has shifted toward the Predators taking game 2. Right now, if you look at the odds, the Predators are minus 122 favorites for tonight. I think they win. I actually picked them to upset the Canucks in our Zen Sports little internal contest. So I think the Predators go ahead and win the series.
Now, Allie, let's switch over to the NBA right quick. The Lakers play the Denver Nuggets. I think they play them today. They're already down 0-2. What are the odds on the Lakers in this series? Are the odds that they win a game, or are the odds higher that they get swept?
Yeah, they are favorites tonight. Small favorites. Are about going with the minus 1 and 1.5 to 2. I see 2 on some other sports books. personally, I think that this is a near sweep. I actually think the Nuggets do win tonight. It's just the Lakers just don't have enough to keep up with Denver. I know it is in Los Angeles, and the Lakers do rally around their home crowd, but Denver seems they're on a mission to repeat. You saw the last couple games; they blew them out. They blew them out game one, I believe, and then there was controversy the last game with Jamal Murray's buzzer beater. But I think the Nuggets are all over the series.
Allie, appreciate you for stopping by here. Enjoy the draft tonight. Keeping our fingers crossed for your New York Giants.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Allie. Quickly before we go, official predictions. What do the Titans do tonight?
I think that they trade out of that pick. They trade down 2 or 3 spots. Either they still get Alt or they get one of those other tackles.
I will be boring. I'll be very impressed if they are able to trade down. I'll applaud them if they do. But I think I'm just going to go with the percentages and say they'll take Alt at 7.
I'm going to say stick and pick Alt at 7. Nick?
I'm with y'all. Joe Alt.
All right. We will see tonight. Draft show starts at 6 o'clock. Stillman and Company's up next. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. with a full draft reaction and Predators preview.
Be love and love on your people. Happy NFL Draft Day and peace.